I'm Olivia, and I'm super excited to share with you my story of infidelity. So get ready to hear all about my complicated and sometimes crazy love life. Before I continue the story, I ask you for a second to give the video a like. It doesn't bother you at all, and it helps me a lot. Let's continue. First, let me introduce myself. I am 22 years old, have messy brown hair, and a laugh that they say is contagious. Almost 3 years ago, I found love in the arms of my boyfriend, Tomas. Those little brown eyes and his unconditional affection made me fall in love from the beginning. We are a stable couple, or so I thought, until something began to haunt my head and my heart. You see, ever since I was a teenager, I've always felt like I was being brought by older men. I don't know exactly why, but something about their maturity and experience made me feel emotions I couldn't explain. When I saw couples with a big age difference, my heart would beat a mile a minute, and a little voice in my head would say to me, "What would it feel like to be with someone like that?" At first, I just thought of it as a passing fantasy, but over time, that idea became a kind of obsession. The internet didn't help much, with all those movies and series showing romances between young girls and older men. Not that I wanted to betray Thomas or hurt him, but that fantasy took hold of me, like an emotional virus I couldn't get out of my head. I distinctly remember one day when Tomas and I were in a park. Everything was perfect, the sun was shining, laughter filled the air, and we were just enjoying each other's company. But, then, I saw him. An older man, handsome and elegant, sitting on a nearby bench. Our eyes met for an instant, and my heart raced as if I had run a marathon. I tried to ignore those mixed feelings, but my mind filled with unanswered questions. What if I had met this man before I was with Thomas? What would it be like to be with someone older and experienced? I felt caught between my love for Thomas and my forbidden desire. It wasn't easy to deal with these emotions. Every time you took me in your arms or said nice words to me, I was filled with guilt for thinking about someone else. I tried to put those thoughts out of my mind, but it seemed impossible. Was I a bad person for having these fantasies? I felt lost and confused. One day, searching for answers on the internet, I came across an article that talked about sexual fantasies and how they are completely normal. I was relieved to know that I wasn't alone in this, and that I wasn't the only one who had secret and somewhat unusual desires. Although the article helped me understand my emotions a bit more, I was still caught between how I felt about Thomas and my curiosity about living out that fantasy with an older man. I felt torn, like I was walking on a very narrow bridge, trying not to fall into the abyss. Talking about this with my close friends was not an option. How would I tell them that, although I love my boyfriend, I also fantasize about another man? I was afraid they would judge me or think I didn't deserve Tomas. So I kept silent and became more immersed in my conflicting thoughts and emotions. And so my forbidden fantasy kept growing in my mind, fueled by curiosity and intrigue. What should I do, hide my feelings and live with this fantasy as a dark secret? Or face reality and find out if there is something beyond this forbidden attraction? It all started on a Friday night, when my girlfriends and I decided to go out and have some fun. The music was loud, the lights were bright, and the atmosphere was great. It was one of those nights when you feel free and carefree, ready to enjoy life. In the middle of the crowd, my gaze met that of an attractive older man standing alone at the bar. His gray hair gave him an interesting air, and his eyes sparkled with a mixture of wisdom and mystery. Although he had a friendly smile, I could notice a certain sadness in his eyes that immediately intrigued me. My friends noticed my change of expression and asked me what was going on. "Nothing, I just saw that man over there," I replied, trying to stay calm and hide what I was feeling. But inside, my heart was beating 1,000 beats an hour and my mind was filled with confused thoughts. I decided to approach the bar, a little afraid, but also with an overwhelming curiosity. What was he doing? Why was I so attracted to him? It wasn't just his physical appearance, but something in his eyes and the way he moved that intrigued me greatly. I introduced myself and he responded with a warm and charming smile. "I'm Roberto," he said, and his voice was as soft as a melody. "Hi, I'm Olivia. I said shyly, feeling my cheeks blush a little. We started talking, and to my surprise, we had a lot of things in common. We talked about our relationships, work, and our hobbies. With every word that came out of his mouth, I felt more attracted to him. As if there was a special connection between us. As we danced, our hands accidentally brushed and I felt an electric current run through my body. My God, what was happening? I felt guilty for enjoying the company of someone who was not my boyfriend so much, but at the same time I could not deny the intensity of the desire I felt for Roberto. The night progressed and we found ourselves in a more secluded corner of the place where we could talk without getting caught up in the music. It was then that Roberto shared part of his story with me. He had gone through difficult times in his life, and that explained the sadness in his eyes. His vulnerability touched me, and I felt the urge to want to care for him and make him feel better. But at the same time, I felt guilty for having such intense thoughts for someone other than Thomas, my boyfriend who had always been so loving and supportive of me. The internal struggle was exhausting. On the one hand, I had my stable and secure relationship in my hands, but on the other hand there was Roberto, an older man who awakened in me emotions I had never experienced before. How could I feel this way about two people at the same time? At the end of the night, Roberto walked me home and, before we said goodbye, he took my hand and stared at me. My heart was beating so hard it seemed to want to burst out of my chest. "It has been an amazing night, Olivia," he said sincerely. "I hope to see you again." After that night, I couldn't stop thinking about Roberto. His presence occupied my thoughts all the time, and my mind was filled with memories of our shared conversations and laughter. My heart was torn between two men, each with a special place in my life. And so I found myself in emotional trouble, not knowing which way to turn. Should I continue seeing Roberto, letting this forbidden attraction grow even more? Or should I put an end to this fantasy and focus on my relationship with Thomas? After that night at the bar, my mind and heart were in real chaos. On the one hand, there was Thomas, my boyfriend, who had no idea what had happened and was still giving me all his love and affection. On the other, there was Roberto, an older and mysterious man who had awakened in me a forbidden and overflowing passion. I was at an emotional crossroads, but curiosity and desire drove me to make a decision. So, with trembling hands, I dared to ask Roberto for his WhatsApp. I thought he probably wouldn't even answer me, or maybe he would take it as a desperate gesture, but to my surprise, he gladly accepted. And there I was holding my phone ready to send Roberto a message. "Come on, Olivia, you can do it," I said to myself, trying to muster up the courage to take this exciting yet terrifying step. Finally, I wrote a simple "Hello, how are you?" and sent it with a slight hint of anxiety. What would he say? Would he reply soon, or would he just ignore my message? As I waited for his reply, my heart was racing, as if I was running a race. To my surprise, Roberto responded almost immediately. His message was full of politeness and good manners, which made my nervousness go off a little. We started chatting and our conversations became more and more interesting and deep. We talked about our goals, our life experiences, and our hopes for the future. I discovered that there was more to him than what I saw that night at the bar. He was a wise and thoughtful man, with a sensitivity that captivated me. Over time, our chats became more flirtatious and playful. We told each other jokes, shared 1,000 if not even sent each other pictures of our favorite places. It was as if we had created our own little secret world, oblivious to the reality that awaited me outside. And as I became more and more immersed in my clandestine adventure with Robert, guilt began to weigh on my heart. I knew I was betraying Thomas's trust, and it made me feel terrible. I wondered what would happen if he found out about this. Despite the guilt, the forbidden fantasy was stronger than ever. Every message from Roberto was like a drug that made me want more. I felt caught between the love I felt for Thomas and the burning desire to live this passion with Roberto. My days were filled with secrets and lies, and it made me question my own integrity. Who was I really? A girl who loved her boyfriend and wanted to have a stable relationship, or an adventurer who got caught up in the thrill of the moment? And so, I found myself caught between two worlds, that of my stable relationship with Thomas, which gave me security and affection, and that of my fantasy with Roberto, which filled me with excitement and adrenaline. It was becoming increasingly difficult to keep the two worlds separate and, without realizing it, I was drifting away from reality. Of course, my heart knew that this could not go on indefinitely. Sooner or later I would have to face the consequences. But the forbidden pull was so powerful, I felt the opportunity to make reality happen was closer than ever. The fear and guilt were still present, but I also felt a kind of excitement at the thought of exploring the unknown. I knew I was playing with fire, but I couldn't help but feel that this adventure could be the most exciting and passionate chapter of my life. And so, with my heart divided and my mind in a constant back and forth of emotions, I went even deeper into my secret meeting with Roberto. After weeks of increasingly close and flirtatious conversations, my relationship with Roberto was growing stronger and stronger. Our messages were full of desire and mischief, and the photos we shared began to become more intimate. Yes, I know, this is not cool at all, but desire was leading me down dangerous paths. Every time I received a message from Roberto, my heart was pounding all over town. It seemed like we were in some kind of exciting and forbidden game. My friends warned me that it was dangerous, that I should be cautious, and that I could hurt the person I love. But the passion and adrenaline were so addictive that I couldn't stop. One night, as I was looking at my phone, a bold idea took hold of my mind. The attraction to Roberto was so intense that I couldn't resist the idea of being with him in person, of living that forbidden fantasy that had tormented me for so long. I decided it was time to take a step further, to take this adventure to another level. But how to do it, how to propose to Roberto the idea of a more intimate encounter without scaring him away from me. It took me days to make that decision. Finally, I summoned up the courage and decided to put the idea to him in a subtle way. I sent him a message saying that I had something important I wanted to talk to him about, something that had been on my mind for some time. I knew it was a conversation we needed to have, but I was still afraid of how he would react. His response was immediate, and I could feel the intrigue in his words. We arranged to meet at a nearby cafe to talk in person. And so we met at that place, on a sunny afternoon that contrasted with my head full of emotions I felt inside. I felt nervous and anxious. I took a deep breath and explained to Roberto that our relationship was something special and that, although I was not looking for a serious relationship, I was attracted to him in a way I could not ignore. I confessed that my secret fantasy of being with an older man had grown so strong that I could not control it. I can't describe the mix of emotions on his face as he listened to me. He seemed surprised, but also cautious. He thanked me for being honest, and told me that he also felt something special between us, but that we had to be mindful of the consequences. We talked about the possible implications of moving forward with this fantasy, and how it would affect our lives and the lives of the people we love. It was clear that we both knew we were playing with fire and could get hurt. Although we didn't come to a final decision at the time, we both knew that the spark between us would not be easily extinguished. We parted with an embrace that left a bittersweet taste, knowing that our story was far from over. Back home, my mind was full of doubts and questions. Had I done the right thing by bringing up the idea to Roberto? Would he be able to resist the temptation and make responsible decisions? I felt confused, but at the same time, excited about what the future might hold. The truth is that this forbidden fantasy was taking me to unknown and dangerous places. I didn't know if I could handle the intensity of what I was experiencing. After talking to Roberto about my fantasy, the tension had grown. Every message we exchanged was full of desire and mischief, and the desire to be together was becoming more and more irresistible. I felt like I was in some kind of emotional trance, torn between my love for Tomas and my forbidden passion for Roberto. I knew I was playing with fire, but the adrenaline and excitement were leading me down dangerous paths. One afternoon, as we chatted over messages, the idea of being together in a more intimate setting came naturally. The sexual tension between us was at its peak, and we both knew what we wanted. It was as if the universe was guiding us to that moment. Finally, I decided to propose to Roberto that we go to a hotel together. Although my heart was racing as I wrote that message, I knew I was determined to fulfill my fantasy of being with an older man. I could not resist the temptation to explore this forbidden passion that had tormented me for so long. I sent him the message and would anxiously await his response. Every second felt like an eternity, but finally her answer came. "Yes, Olivia, I want to be with you too," he wrote. Adrenaline surged through my body, and I knew this was the beginning of an adventure that could change my life forever. The days leading up to the meeting were full of emotions. I felt excited, but also filled with guilt. I knew that what I was doing was wrong, that it could hurt Thomas and destroy our relationship, but the desire was stronger than any logic or reason. My friends warned me again and again about the consequences of my actions, but I kept going, as if guided by an irresistible force. I couldn't help but think about what it would be like to be with Roberto. To experience that forbidden passion that had haunted me for so long. The day of the encounter arrived, and my heart was about to burst out of my chest. What was I doing? Was I prepared to face the consequences of my decisions? Excitement and fear were mixing inside me, creating an emotional storm that left me breathless. The day finally arrived. We met at that intimate hotel we had chosen, and emotions were running high. My heart was pounding, as if it wanted to escape from my chest, and my hands were shaking from the excitement and adrenaline that coursed through my body. Being in front of Roberto, the older man who had awakened such an intense passion in me, was a surreal experience. I felt we were connected in a unique and special way, and the chemistry between us was undeniable. Without many words, we looked into each other's eyes, and I knew there was no turning back. We were about to fulfill that forbidden fantasy that had haunted me for so long. The desire was latent, and neither of us could resist the temptation to explore the unknown. Trembling hands and racing hearts guided us toward the hotel room. With each step we took, the excitement grew, and I knew I was about to live one of the hottest experiences of my life. Once inside, the atmosphere was filled with tension and desire. We looked into each other's eyes and slowly moved closer. Our lips met in a passionate kiss that unleashed a maelstrom of emotions inside me. It was as if time stood still and only the two of us existed at that moment. Every caress, every touch of skin, was an explosion of sensations that took me to the limit of pleasure. Roberto knew my body as if he had studied it for years, and his expert hands ran over every inch of my skin with a delicacy that took my breath away. The passion was so intense that I felt like in an erotic dream. His lips explored my neck, while his hands were lost in my hair. My whispers of pleasure mingled with his, creating a symphony of desire and lust. We let ourselves be carried away by unbridled passion, without thinking of anything but the pleasure we were giving each other. Every moment with Roberto was like an electric shock that ran through me from head to toe. My God, it was incredible. Time was flying by, and I never wanted that moment to end. But, like all good things, it also came to an end. We lay in each other's arms, exhausted and satisfied, enjoying each other's closeness and warmth. After that fiery encounter, I was super excited to have fulfilled that fantasy I'd always had, and I couldn't deny it, it was great. Now I had to hide any evidence or suspicion of my encounter with Roberto. I had to pretend in front of my boyfriend as if nothing had happened. The experience had been one of the hottest and most exciting of my life. I could not deny that I had enjoyed every second with Roberto and that I had been immersed in a passion I had never experienced before. I was caught between mixed feelings, not knowing which way to turn. On the one hand, I wanted to continue exploring this forbidden passion with Roberto, but on the other hand I knew that if Thomas found out, everything would end. After that ardent encounter with Roberto at the hotel, I was trapped in that world of emotions and desires. I couldn't deny that I had enjoyed every moment with him, and the passion between us kept growing with each encounter. Being together was like a magnetic connection that drew us together helplessly. Although my relationship with Thomas was still seemingly fine, I knew I was living a double life. On the sly, I was still seeing Roberto, exploring a level of passion I had never imagined. Each encounter was an intense and thrilling experience that took my breath away. What I had with Roberto was unlike anything I had ever experienced before. His experience and maturity led me to discover sensations and pleasures I had never experienced before. Every moment with him was a roller coaster of emotions, full of desires and whispers of pleasure. However, while I enjoyed this connection with Roberto, I also felt a knot in my stomach. Guilt would creep in at unexpected times, but I tried to ignore it to move on. I kept telling myself that this was just a fling, that it didn't have to affect my relationship with Tomas. But even though my heart was divided, my boyfriend didn't suspect a thing. He seemed to be doing a good job of hiding this other part of my life. Even though deep down I knew this wasn't right, I let myself get carried away by the passion and excitement of the moment. Every encounter with Roberto made me feel alive and desired. His presence filled me with intense emotions and made me momentarily forget my worries. But, of course, I was also aware of the consequences of my actions and what I was risking. The fear of being discovered and the fear of hurting Thomas were mixed with the desire and passion I felt for Roberto. I didn't know how to handle all these complicated emotions and decisions. In the meantime, I kept meeting Roberto on the sly, looking for moments of intimacy and passion. Each encounter was a kind of escape from reality, a way to release all my pent-up emotions. My mind was full of unanswered questions, and sometimes I felt lost in this dilemma. I knew I had to make a decision, but it was hard to know which one was the right one. Should I continue with this adventure and risk everything, or should I end it to protect Thomas and our relationship? In those moments, I remembered the good times I had had with Thomas and how much he loved me. It hurt me to think about the possibility of losing him, but I also felt irresistibly attracted to Roberto. Life went on, and I was caught in the middle of a dilemma that I didn't know how to solve. I kept seeing Roberto on the sly, trying to maintain a balance. Sex and desire for him were hard to ignore. So, from time to time, we still met, but only for intimate encounters. Those moments with Roberto filled me with excitement and passion, but also left me with mixed consents. I knew I was risking a lot by pursuing this secret relationship, but the temptation was strong and sometimes I found it hard to resist. My relationship with Thomas was apparently still going well. He had no idea what was going on, and that made me feel a little relieved. I was trying to maintain a facade of normalcy. I can't deny that I love Thomas and value our relationship, but this experience with Roberto has made me question many things. I have realized that there are desires and emotions in me that I can't ignore, but I also can't deny the commitment I have to Thomas. I am caught between two worlds, not knowing which is the right path to follow. On the one hand, desire and passion draw me to Roberto, but on the other, my relationship and the love I have with Tomas. I don't know what decision to make, but I will keep you updated with what happens. Thank you for being part of this gripping story of infidelity. If you want to keep enjoying and exploring other exciting stories, I invite you to subscribe and join our community so you won't miss a single video. Click on the subscribe button to receive instant updates on our upcoming stories.